Storytelling in a small town.
Welcome back to Storytelling in a Small Town.
My favorite part.
Everyone's happy. We just did it. All right. Thank you for coming, everybody. We just did our intro, and now we're heading out for the day.
Bye.
Just the intro. Honestly, it'd probably do really well if we just made those shorts. Compilation of them.
All the different
30.
intros. That'd be fun.
Oh, that's a great end of the season thing. That's cool.
Okay. We'll work on that. I'll work on that. Well, this has been fun. I think I've been really enjoying talking about how we can really focus on the small business and focusing on that side. And I feel it's been really good. I know I've gotten feedback. Sheila was listening to one of our episodes too that just came out. And she said she really liked it. It was the same one you texted me like, hey, I was trying to listen to this and do work and I kept getting distracted from my work to listen to it because it has such good nuggets.
Yeah.
So I hope this is being helpful to anyone that's out there listening of just new ideas, new ways of how you can tell the story of your business. And we're going to continue that today by talking about one of the favorite styles of videos right now.
Trent's microphone is running away from him currently.
It's not that scary. Microphone. Don't be scared.
One of the styles
talk about?
I actually have a couple of videos of mine to do around this. I just haven't edited them or put them out yet. And it's behind the scenes.
Ooh, okay.
BTS, not the band.
Yes, BTS. So if anyone's ever heard BTS when we're talking about videos and stuff, that's behind the scenes. You might also hear BTS photos or BTS of like movies and stuff like that. That means behind the scenes, just making sure we're all on the same page there. And that's actually a really powerful thing right now about, I think with businesses, a lot of people don't realize what people will think is interesting. So they're like, oh, why does anyone want to see what happens behind this, right? Like they only care about my product. They only care about what's out front. It's like, well, no, there's more to it. I don't know. Have you had much experience with BTS kind of stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. I did a whole like website redo of a bakery and all they wanted for the website was like in the kitchen prepping the food. So like I got 3 shots of the front counter of like their actual finished baked goods and everything else was like talking about the raw ingredients, talking about the process that they used to make it and all that stuff, which I think they've understood that that's like definitely a draw for a lot of people. It's why people love baking shows and things like that because they get to see kind of the behind the scenes of the finished product. But yeah, it's fun. It's cool to think about how behind the scenes can be sort of like at the forefront of like, this is what we do as a business and here's a peek inside.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. I would have thought of that as like a process video versus versus BTS, but it's
kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
what's the actual
What's the
difference? I don't know that there is one.
Yeah, yep.
I love that.
Yeah, a process is
100%.
Insight into the process.
That is the behind the scenes part. That's really cool. Didn't realize how like powerful that was until I was out doing a commercial shoot with a business in Everett, and another employee pulled out their camera and was filming me filming their person with a teleprompter and stuff, and that post got a ton of reactions.
Nice.
And I was sad because I look really fat in that picture. but yay for the reactions. That was of course good.
Yeah. Motivation for me
to
start working out
back to the gym.
I always see like behind the scenes of me and I'm like, oh, is that what I look like?
Right.
Oh,
I'm like, man, why was I wearing that shirt?
Shoot. You start working out more.
Right. You discover things about yourself in BTS.
Yeah, you really do. Yeah.
But I also think it's really interesting that you talk about that because for me, it's funny because we all want to be perfect, right? We all want to come across that perfect. And when it's even BTS, you're like, oh, you think I want this to be perfect. But that also like sometimes doesn't help people connect to you. It's like when you're like, I don't think I look the greatest or something like that. That's when someone's like, oh my God, you are an actual human. You're not always wearing makeup or always looking like a model.
Yeah.
Right. So I really feel like that's another reason BTS is so powerful is because it does get a lot of that prepared look, or it really pulls back the curtains. It's like, oh, you are a business or a person just like I am. Talking about, oh my God, I don't know where I'm going to put all these boxes in my room because it's so full in my storage room.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what that's like. I can't fit anything in my office anymore or anything in my garage. Everyone can relate with that, right? Like you just really helped relate it. So I think that's another interesting point of why BTS is so successful and why to think about it. Because what's one thing that you've seen BTS of that you're like, I never would have thought this was this interesting?
in my prep for trying to work on this studio build out stuff, I was checking out a couple products that are more or less robots. And there's this 15-minute long review video. It's literally the only video about this product that I could find, like, that wasn't made by the company. It's like this guy's full production company, like, unboxing this thing, and they have this big studio and stuff. And there is a little kind of like 2-minute segment, maybe like 2 minutes into the video, where the host is going through the unboxing and he's trying to assemble this very complex thing. And the whole thing is just about him not reading the directions. And it's like him trying to put it together, and like the other guys are like filming him trying to do it. He can't figure out how, like, what these parts go to. And he's like opening more boxes and opening more bags, and just like goes on and on and on. And it was driving me freaking insane. Like, like just this level of stupidity to like buy. I mean, it's like a $15,000 robot, and this guy's just like, I'm just gonna like fudge my way through trying to assemble it, right? Yeah. And it's like I'm like freaking out trying to figure out like what's gonna happen next. And I realized I watched this dude's entire 15-minute video, pretty sure, because I got hooked by this stupid 2-minute thing where he was pretending not to follow the directions. And so that was like really the one BTS segment in the whole thing that wasn't like this sort of curated studio experience that they had put together. But
yeah,
no, that's interesting. And what it was literally just that it like enraged you, and how he was approaching it is why you engaged you so much.
Yeah, as I was like, well, now I have to figure out like if he ever actually put it together, and like if he did it right, or if he's like, I thought for sure he was gonna break it. Like there was no, like, I'm like watching this dude very indelicately like slam these parts together, and I'm like sweating, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, like, this is crazy.
I think you hit on a really cool point though that I want to highlight for a second, of just the unknown sometimes. Like, I think that's something that we forget about, of like, oh, I want to know exactly how this video is going to end. I want to know exactly what I'm telling people. But sometimes when it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. And even like literally telling your audience or that camera, that's like, we're going to try this and see what happens. First time I'm doing this, people, one, it relates. And then people are like, what is going to happen? Right? Like there's just that human curiosity that you can really sink into with BTS. And it doesn't take preparation, right? Like if you want to have that mystery and like a plan stuff, it takes so much effort. Like people don't realize how much effort it can take. But BTS, you can literally be like, hey, I got a brand new box. No idea what came in it. Don't remember what I ordered. Let's find out together. Suddenly you're hooked. What did you get? Why is that box that shape? It's as big as a person. What's in there? And it just really hooks you in. So just wanted to highlight that kind of like psychological thing that goes into it too, that you can do with BTS. Do you have any good examples there, Brian?
I think, yeah, there's a couple different things that came to mind thinking about BTS. And like, as a filmmaker, I'm really interested in BTS to see how something was made. So like the DVD extras in the movies, like the bonus disc or whatever, loved that as a kid because I could like see how movies were made. And it was just like something I was really obsessed with. Today, like not today, but like in today's world, I was watching a Netflix documentary about cheetahs, which was really cool and compelling and interesting. But then there was a follow-up documentary about following the guy that was filming the cheetahs. And I was super interested in like, what camera was he using? What rig did he have? How did he literally get right up to a like pride of lions to film this thing? Like, how did you do this thing? And so the documentary was sort of a behind the scenes of the guy. So I was approaching that BTS more as like I want to learn something. Kind of like I'm literally standing in front of my TV with my phone, taking pictures every time they showed a shot of him and his rig. Because I'm like, what's on this rig? And then I'll like zoom in on the photo and see, oh, so it's that kind of mount. And oh, what's that interesting thing? And he had this whole like side rail on the side of his Jeep that was like made custom for the camera. So I like engaged with that because I was like wanting to learn about filmmaking in an interesting way. And then there's the other side of BTS that you kind of mentioned, which is sort of like the entertainment factor of just like, this is really interesting and entertaining, and I don't know what's going to happen next. And it's sort of like a flip. There's like two different approaches you can consume, I guess, when it comes to BTS.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to highlight of doing BTS. There's a lot that your audience can get out of it, more than you probably think, right? Like we think of it very, I'm going to say almost vainly of, oh my gosh, I don't look good. This doesn't look like I know my stuff together. But listen to those stories we just told about why we engaged with those, right? We wanted to know the entertainment factor. We wanted to know the suspense. We wanted to know that. We wanted to learn something. you might know your industry and think that's not interesting because you've been into it for so long. But then I know you've all had that one conversation where you talk with someone's like, oh yeah, I do this. And they're like, what is that like? And you start talking about like what you think are the most mundane things. And suddenly their eyes just get like saucers. And they're like, what? You do that? You do what? Oh, that's involved. I know I get like that all the time when I'm meeting people and I'm just like with different jobs. I'm like, I have no idea what that's like. What is it? And they're like, oh, I have to do this. I'm like, oh my God, I never would have thought for being a usher at a movie theater, you had so many, like, you'd be surprised how much these simple tasks that you think have, the people that don't live that life, it's so interesting to them because they're like, I never thought about it that way. I want to learn that there's infinite number of ways that your audience can take it, but don't try and be that filter for them. Just put it out there, and the ones that like it and want it will watch and let you know.
Yeah.
Also look at them for like inspiration a lot for different things, you know, or like whether it's like technological or process wise or whatever it might be. There's I think it's Film Crew Magazine is like Facebook/TikTok that has, it's literally all BTS.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's frequently like where they show like top frame is the BTS shot and bottom frame is like the composite shot or the finished shot.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like show me like the whole thing start to finish. I want to see them like constructing the platform that they used. Like what kind of metals? Was this that J33 steel or what are we talking about here? You know, like I want that level of detail in like BTS if it's available, if it's about this topic that I'm into like professionally like that, you know, like let's see the whole thing. And this is frequently for stuff that's like I don't do a ton of cinematography. You know, I spend more of my time in like the videography and like live stream and broadcast world. So it's always interesting to me to see the tools that are used in the segment of the business that I'm not in every day or as often or whatever, you know. I love that stuff. And like I'm totally just like a gearhead, and so all of the like the cool tools and the custom built rigs and that stuff, that's the kind of stuff that like really excites me. I think I watched a 20-minute video about a jib truck, like a camera crane truck, and like what the different seating positions do inside and like the kind of comms they have and stuff. And I mean, like, you know, I don't know how many other people are going to spend that time checking that out, but
I know you're not the only one that watched it, right? Like everyone has that niche, right? So I think it's important. And the other part I kind of want to talk to too, that I think you two will have some good ideas for about is, cool, we talk about BTS, why it's important. Hopefully you kind of understand the impact that it can have and how it can reach an audience, whether you really perceive that or not, because you're just so worried about how will I look. Just think about what will other people get from it. But how do you actually capture that, right? Because we're all busy, we're all running around. How would you recommend someone actually goes and gets that BTS without it spending a lot of time, without making it a big ordeal?
In the corporate world that I was in previously, BTS frequently consisted of whoever the person was that was like my assistant for the day, which could have been somebody from creative, marketing, a director, you know, like literally any random person from the building, right? And that person would take their phone and open Instagram and make like a 3-second boomerang. And that was always like the promo for whatever the project like was that we were doing. Super simple, like not even like a 30-second thing. Very, very like quick. Or some of this was just a photo, you know, might not even like been a whole video.
Yeah.
It depends on what you want to do with it. I always have to kind of caveat it with that.
Fair enough.
I see like tree companies with a dude, they're all felling a tree and they already limbed it and they're down there and the guy's cutting down the big log or the big like trunk or whatever. And so dude just whips out his phone and films that, and it gets hundreds of thousands of views because it's just like really interesting because you're like, oh, the tree's coming down and is it going to go in the right spot or am I going to see it fall into this house or whatever it might be. There's like people, man, all these like social media gurus who are like, this is why, like they deconstruct the shot and this is why it hooked people and you know you have to do it this way otherwise it won't be successful. But then it's just like you can shoot a video of someone icing a cake for 5 minutes and people who are interested in that are gonna watch it. And it can be literally as simple as pulling out your phone, getting a phone tripod, hitting record and just doing it. And it can be as simple as setting up a phone and talking about the thing that you're doing for that day. And if it's like take 30 seconds each day and do that, it's great.
Well, and I think it's even getting into, there's almost like actual styles of BTS coming up, right? There's like, hey, I'm just going to film my whole day and then do a voiceover afterwards of what it was.
Right.
There's that one that's pretty popular. I also want to throw out time lapse are really fun to do, and your phones can do them, right? Like set it up on a tripod, just let it go, run it for even if it's only an hour, just like short increments. Because what a time lapse is, for those that aren't as familiar, it comes out as a video, but it's basically every 5 seconds or so, they're just going to take a picture, take a picture, take a picture, and they put this together. Some more advanced time lapse cameras and other stuff, they'll take like a short clip, video clip every so often, and they stitch it together in one video. So it'll look weird because you might be in one spot and then literally the next frame you're in a different spot. But that's because there's been some duration of time between those two pictures being taken or those two videos being taken. But it can show big transformations very quickly. Like I did that for when we made the studio. I set up a GoPro and put a time lapse on to show what it looked like, how much time it took to do this. It took a while, but you can kind of see how it went from very bland, not a lot happening, to suddenly it's a winter wonderland in here. So that's a fun way that you can do it too. Even just a picture of just like, hey, here's my messy desk for the day. You'd be surprised how much sometimes that can show to people and have an influence too.
If you're thinking through what a good BTS thing of what you do is, what has a big transformation, like especially for the time lapse thing. So it's like what goes from like a blank slate to a full canvas, basically, and how can I capture that? And so, you know, we're sitting in a room that is fully decked out for Christmas, which is really cool. And having a wide shot of this room going from kind of a blank canvas to this set is a really interesting like concept or use case for like a BTS type of time lapse. You know, things that you wouldn't want to do is, okay, I have a camera with a zoom lens and I want to film a time lapse, but it's going to take place, like I'm only going to capture this part, but like really what's taking place is everything else. Not a really good way to capture like a time lapse or BTS stuff. And so thinking through what that might be is interesting.
And I think that's a good part too when we talk about what are you actually capturing, right? Like we're talking the events, but like when you're actually what we call framing, right? Like what's showing up in the camera. Bigger is always better, right? Like you show more of it than you think you need to do, because again, you might be surprised that someone's like, oh, I saw your camera, or you're moving this random stand over to the side. You think nothing of it, but like, I really want to know about that. I love how you're using that. And that might be something that gets you a sale later.
I think also when you're talking about framing, a important strategy to use is like, what are you doing for the end user, right? If you're trying to figure out like, when should I be doing a time lapse, I thought the simple answer to that question is when you are changing something for your customer, when you're getting it ready for them, you want to show them what you're getting ready. And so if you can demonstrate how you've built this up from what was relatively, you know, nothing, or what its previous form was, that's when this is like, it's like the most effective strategy, I think. We had a client who they do this huge event inside of their office space. So their office space happens to be an airplane hangar. So their BTS time lapse was pulling the airplane out, hooking up the tractor, setting up all the seating, and we're talking like hundreds and hundreds of chairs. Like it's rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of chairs. You know, any of the shots, the framing shots that you can get where you can show very, very demonstrably, here is an empty space that is now filled with things, or here is a space that has now been built up vertically. And if you can demonstrate that framing where it looks horizontal or like it's moving upward, downward, you can show that it's in motion somehow. I think that's some of the best, you know, the best time lapse shots.
Yeah. If it's going to be an hour of you sitting at your desk and doing paperwork, might be interesting if you have a stack that is here and then it goes like this. Like that might be an interesting kind of before after kind of thing. But if it's just you staring at a computer for 8 hours, may not be the best time lapse. But it could be a like, here's how I see art in an Excel sheet. Not my cup of tea, but people love formulas in Excel. And it's just like how I can take this thing on my screen and turn it into this thing. And then like showing that could be a really interesting thing.
Well, and depending how you do this stuff, like even going back to the desk one, even if you get like a time lapse of you looking at a desk, but you just can't sit still and you're always moving around, it'll show an interesting one. It's like, hey, this is what my day looks like with, I know I have this kind of attention span issue, right? Like if you talk about the things that you're trying to battle, and that can also demonstrate kind of the challenges you face of like, I can't sit still to do my computer work. This is what my workday looks like. That can also be effective. Again, that one you have to think a little bit more about what's the messaging and really like kind of pre-plan how you're presenting that. but you'd be surprised how even just the challenges you're facing as like a BTS can be really impactful too, of just getting people to relate and kind of sympathize with like, oh yeah, I get that. Like you are a human. Again, I feel like so much of what we talk about is just how do you show you're a human? And BTS is one of the best ways because it's raw, it's not pretty, it's not polished, but it shows it's real. It's real.
Have you guys seen the holiday ad for the UPS store that's been circulating around?
Not
I
yet.
don't think
It's
so.
this guy, he's online trying to do all of his like Christmas or holiday shopping or whatever. And he's like going through all these websites and he's looking at all the online markets or whatever. And then he gets to this screen that has the verify you're human icon. And he stares at that. And it has like a really profound moment of like, how am I proving that I'm human? And then it shows him like getting off of his chair and going to different businesses and buying a gift from an actual storefront and like then goes to the UPS store to have them ship it to his mom or whatever it ends up being. Really sweet commercial, but just like that verify you're human CAPTCHA thing.
Wow.
But it's just like, how are we verifying that we're real people? And that just kind of reminded me of that ad, but it was a really good ad.
I
And,
got chills just from you describing that ad.
Yeah.
Like
Solid.
That is
Super
great.
cool,
So
right?
solid.
So this is you
Beautiful.
verifying you're human is basically what we're saying
Yeah.
BTS
Holy
is.
smokes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It
I
was
like
a cool
that.
ad.
I haven't I'd missed that.
I haven't seen that one yet.
I'll share it with you guys
either.
after this.
But that was awesome. Sweet. Well, I think we've hit on a lot with this episode, right? We've talked about different types of BTS, why BTS is impactful, and then just some simple tricks that you can keep in mind as you're creating your BTS, right? Like simple techniques, simple approaches, different ways you can do it. Again, there's not really a wrong way. We're just trying to give you some of those ideas so you can think through and just try something. Because ultimately, that's what it takes, is just taking that first step, giving it a shot, and get better from there. Anything else on BTS or takeaways from this one?
Say BTS pro tip, if you start with a wide angle shot of like the whole room, like building up this whole room into your Christmas space, don't be afraid to also then introduce a tight shot on some smaller element that's being built up, like the papers on the desk. You could do the whole desk and then a close up on the papers stacking up higher and higher and higher on the opposite side. So just don't be afraid to mix it up a little bit and still keep the speed and the rate that the video is moving at the same, but add some variation to the parts that we're viewing, as long as it's still consistent with the build up or whatever the hype is that we're trying to create.
That got very technical, but yes.
Sorry, I saved it for the end though.
No, it was good. It was good.
I'm gonna put it right at the end.
And
Yeah.
you did say pro tip. So anyone that's there, that's your pro tip, right?
Yep.
Like, how do you build and compose and put this, if you're ready there, like there's a lot of cool ways you can do it. And that was a great example there. Awesome. Anything else? Well, until next time, peace.
Bye.